Warning, this video contains descriptions of extreme violence against civilians, including children. 12,000 people killed in 48 hours. Bodies piled so high in morgues that families can't identify their loved ones. A 5-year-old child shot dead while in their mother's arms. This isn't history. This is happening right now, in Iran, while the world is distracted. And President Trump just said, locked and loaded. Today, we're breaking down the Iran massacre of January 2026, how it happened under a complete internet blackout, and why it might trigger the next Middle East war. Let's start with what sparked this. Iran's economy has been collapsing for years. U.S. sanctions, corruption, mismanagement. By late December 2025, inflation was out of control. The Iranian rial, their currency, lost 20% of its value in just 1 week. Basic goods became unaffordable. People couldn't feed their families. On December 28, 2025, protests erupted in Tehran's Grand Bazaar. Merchants, shopkeepers, regular people. They weren't asking for regime change. They were asking to be able to afford bread. But the protests spread. Fast. Within days, demonstrations hit all 31 of Iran's provinces. Universities joined. Workers joined. By early January, millions were in the streets. And then, on January 3, 2026, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei gave a speech. He called the protesters rioters and said they must be put in their place. That was the signal. January 7th, according to human rights groups, 13 protesters were killed that day. But that was just the beginning. January 8th, evening, Iran shut down the internet completely, every connection, mobile networks, landlines, everything. This is critical to understand. When authoritarian regimes cut the internet before a crackdown, it's because they're about to do something they don't want the world to see, and that's exactly what happened. Under the cover of the Internet Blackout, Iranian security forces began a massacre. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Basij paramilitary forces, Iran's police. They had one order: crush the protests. No restraint. Here's what we know happened on January 8th and 9th, based on reports that have slowly emerged. In Fardis, a city west of Tehran, witnesses report security forces using a machine gun to mow down protesters. At least 50 people killed in one location. In Kermanshah, 5 protesters shot dead. Witnesses say security forces were aiming for heads and chests. In Malakshahi, Elam province, at least 5 killed by gunfire. 30 hospitalized, several in critical condition. In Tehran, the capital, hospitals began to overflow with the injured and the dead. One eyewitness who spoke to CNN described seeing bodies piled up on each other in a Tehran hospital. 6 hospitals in Tehran alone recorded 217 deaths by January 9th. Most from live ammunition, gunshot wounds to the head and chest. A doctor in Rasht reported 70 bodies arrived at one hospital in a single day. The government demanded families pay 7 million reals, about $7,000, to retrieve their family member's body. At another hospital in Shiraz, medical staff were treating a woman who had been shot in the head. One medical worker said, "I have never seen such scenes in my life. The shameless people shot her in the head and neck. Do you have any idea how many patients we have?" A Chicago-based Iranian doctor who stayed in contact with friends in Tehran before the blackout said this. One orthopedic surgeon friend said they had multiple bodies in their emergency department, at least 30 people shot in their limbs. They ran out of blood for transfusions. He called another hospital to ask if they had blood supplies. The doctor on the other end was crying on the phone because they have no blood supplies either. Farabi Eye Hospital in Tehran saw 200 to 300 patients with pellets lodged in their eyes. Security forces were using shotguns loaded with hunting ammunition. One photographer from Elam posted a video showing his face covered in wounds from metal pellets. Holding up a pellet to the camera, he said, "Killing a human is a game to them. They think we are prey, and they are hunters." But perhaps the most horrifying account comes from a doctor in Neyshabur. In an audio message to CNN, she said security forces used military rifles to kill at least 30 people in her city. Among them were children, she said. A 5-year-old child was shot while in their mother's arms. Let that sink in. A 5-year-old, shot while being held by their mother. She added, hospitals are extremely chaotic and patients terrified to admit and be identified. For this reason, we are trying to inform people and treat them privately in clinics. Amnesty International reported that one protester from Daedasht was shot by security forces and is now at risk of losing his leg. But he's avoiding hospitals because he fears arrest. Another incident, an 11-year-old boy was shot during protests in Tehran. Medical sources say he will probably lose his testicle. Security forces weren't just killing protesters in the streets, they were raiding hospitals. In Elam, security forces allegedly stormed a hospital, deployed tear gas, and beat patients and medical personnel. Families were rushing to hospitals to take the bodies of their children and bury them immediately, still in the same clothes they died in. By January 10th, Iran International estimated at least 2,000 people had been killed in just 48 hours. By January 13th, the estimate had risen to 12,000. Some sources say it could be as high as 20,000. CBS News verified a 16-minute video showing at least 366 bodies, and possibly more than 400, piled up at a morgue in a Tehran suburb. The video shows forensic personnel documenting injuries, gunshot wounds, shotgun wounds, gashes, severe trauma. One analyst described it as potentially the greatest foreign policy crisis since Vietnam. But in reality, it's worse. This is the largest massacre in Iranian contemporary history, larger than the 1988 executions, larger than the 2009 protests, larger than the 2019 crackdown, larger than the Masa Amini protests in 2022. 12,000 to 20,000 people killed in 2 days. While the world couldn't see because Iran had cut the internet. So what is Trump doing about this? On January 9th, Trump posted on Truth Social, "Locked and loaded." That's a direct military threat. Trump has been clear, if Iran kills protesters, he will respond with force. On January 10th, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the United States supports the people of Iran and that Trump is prepared to act. But Trump's actual policy is more complicated and potentially more dangerous. First, economic warfare. On January 10th, Trump announced 25% tariffs on all countries that trade with Iran. This went into effect immediately. This is huge. China is Iran's largest trading partner. The European Union also trades with Iran. India, Turkey. These tariffs will hit them hard. Some analysts say this could destroy the US-China trade deal Trump just negotiated. But Trump doesn't care. He wants to economically strangle Iran. Second, military options. According to Foreign Policy magazine, Trump is reviewing military strike options against Iran. The range goes from cyber attacks all the way to full-scale bombardment of Iranian infrastructure. Trump told reporters, "We can meet with them, but we may have to do something before we meet." Translation: we might bomb them first, negotiate later. Now, here's where it gets really dangerous. Iran has made clear, if the US strikes Iranian territory, Iran will retaliate against Israel and all US bases in the Middle East. The US has thousands of troops in Iraq, Syria, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and the UAE, all within range of Iranian missiles. Israel is already on high alert. In June 2025, Iran and Israel fought a brief but intense war. That conflict ended in a ceasefire. But it's fragile. If Trump strikes Iran, Iran will likely strike Israel. And then Israel will respond. And then we're in a regional war. Add to this, Russia and China. Russia has been cooperating with Iran for years. China depends on Iranian oil. Both countries have warned the US not to intervene militarily. If the US invades or bombs Iran, Russia might escalate in Ukraine. China might move on Taiwan. The entire global order could unravel. Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, who is hawkish on Iran, has been pushing for regime change in Iran for decades. There are people in Trump's administration who see this crisis as an opportunity. But regime change in Iran would require a massive military operation. Iran has 80 million people. It's 3 times the size of Iraq. The terrain is mountainous. Any invasion would make the Iraq war look small. And the Iranian people don't want American intervention. They want the regime gone, yes. But they want to do it themselves. That's what makes this so tragic. Iranians are dying for their freedom. They're chanting death to Khamenei. They're calling for the return of the monarchy, for democracy, for anything other than the current regime. But if Trump turns this into an American war, he'll unite Iranians against the US. He'll make the regime look like victims. He'll destroy the very movement he claims to support. So what happens next? 3 scenarios. Scenario 1, Trump backs down. International pressure mounts. European allies push back. The tariffs cause too much economic pain. Trump realizes military intervention would be catastrophic. He keeps the sanctions, maybe adds more, but doesn't strike militarily. The Iranian regime survives but is weakened. Protests continue but are suppressed. Probability, 40%. Scenario 2, limited strikes. Trump orders cyber attacks or drone strikes on specific Iranian targets. Revolutionary Guard bases, intelligence facilities.
Scenario 3, full regional war. Trump orders major military strikes. Iran retaliates against Israel and US bases. Israel strikes back. Russia and China escalate elsewhere. The Middle East erupts. This would be the most dangerous scenario. Probability, 25%. As of right now, the internet is still shut down in most of Iran. Reports are still trickling out. The death toll is still rising. Iranian security forces are visiting private hospitals, threatening staff to hand over names and addresses of injured protesters. At least one protester, 26-year-old Irfan Soltani, has been sentenced to execution on January 14th for participating in protests. The UN has called for an independent investigation. Amnesty International is documenting war crimes. The International Criminal Court could eventually get involved. But none of that helps the people dying right now. 12,000 to 20,000 dead. Families searching through morgues for their children. A 5-year-old shot while in their mother's arms. And the world is silent. Trump says he's locked and loaded, but military intervention might make this worse. The Iranian people are fighting for freedom. They deserve support, but they need smart support. Not bombs, not tariffs that hurt them more than the regime. They need the world to see what's happening. They need pressure on their government. They need solidarity. Instead, they're dying in the dark, under an internet blackout, while global powers calculate their next move. This is the Iran massacre of January 2026, and we're only seeing the beginning. Thanks for watching. If this information is valuable to you, please like and subscribe. Check the description for all sources and timestamps, and let me know in the comments, what should the world do about Iran? Should Trump intervene militarily, or is there a better way? See you in the next one.